28th of February 2022, greetings from Rwanda's capital Kigali. This is what makes our top stories tonight. The Ministry of Education is urging parents to work with school administrations on the school feeding program to play a role in the initiative. Pope Francis has appointed Papias Musengimana, the Bishop of the Byumba Diocese, and allowed Bishop Siliverienza Mwita, who had been heading the diocese, to go into retirement. And onto the international scene. For the first time since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, talks are underway between Russian and Ukrainian delegations at the Belarusian border. A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Rwanda Television News. My name is Sam Kalisa. To kick off, the Ministry of Education is urging parents to work with school administrations on the school feeding program and play a greater role in the initiative. Betty Motoni kickstarts tonight's bulletin with this report.
At 12 p.m., Fiona Muzinani is revising as she waits for her meal. Fiona with her fellow students say that school feeding program contributes a lot in their academic excellence. When you eat from home, the time would use to revise is spent going home to eat, and you come back when you're late and you miss some lessons. But when you eat from school, you do it on time and you have enough time to revise.
Everyone would feel happy. Just imagine all of us seated together sharing a meal, and after we all go to class at the same time. But you find some eating, and those that didn't pay are just seated outside.
The students are happy for this program, but the parents have to pay 12,000 per term, and some of the parents say that it's a lot of money they cannot afford to pay. It is so challenging to me. I fail to gather money. My children, one comes to eat home and another one eats at school, but he has also started recently. He has also been eating from home. Depending on where you stay, no job. At secondary level, government should reduce at least to 8,000 so that every parent can be able to pay. The Ministry of Education has noted that in the development of this program, parents should also be involved. It was also explained that the involvement is not only paying money, and they can also donate food supplies to school or perform other tasks to promote the program.
We want this program to reach every child that comes at school. So we want every child to be able to have their meal at school. And this is what we have been doing with this rollout of the school feeding program to all levels. Now, there are some parents who have not been contributing their part, and what we have been doing is embark on these sensitization campaigns and to make sure that all the parents can contribute. So the government of Rwanda contributes for around 40% for the meals, and the parents are expected to meet the remaining 60%. Now there are different modalities of meeting that percentage. Parents can contribute money, but they can also contribute in kind. We have been seeing some parents who bring food items at school. But we have also seen other parents who can contribute labor or other things that are needed for the school feeding program. So what we ask is that every parent is involved. And those who have difficulties in meeting that percentage, we ask them to come to the schools, talk to the heads of schools, so that we can understand specifically what type of difficulties they are facing, and then we can figure out how we can support them.
The country director of World Food Program is appreciating the effort that Rwanda has put in promoting school feeding program.
I'm so proud to be working in Rwanda with a government who is so committed to their own children, because the children are the future of the country. Any program that is starting has teething problems, and it will always take time to find the right model before you say like, okay, this is it, we are on track. WFP will continue working with the government. Our current program on school feeding is until 2025. So we will continue feeding children in school. We're currently feeding 117,000 children, mostly in the most food insecure districts. But we will also continue to do capacity development and working together with the government to build their national programs.
Today, the Ministry of Education, in partnership with the United Nations Food World Programme, has launched a school feeding week in celebration of 7th edition of African Day of School Feeding. Betty Mutoni, RwandaTV News.
Thank you very much, Betty, for the report. And as we move ahead, Pope Francis has appointed Papias Musenjimana, the Bishop of the Byumba Diocese, and allowed Bishop Selevirienza Kamwita, who has been heading the diocese, to go into retirement. The new bishop had been heading the Nyachibanda Seminary since 2018 and said he was pleasantly surprised by the appointment. He has vowed to build upon the achievements to continue helping the Byumba Diocese to progress both in faith and development. And as we move ahead, local residents living in Rugerero sector of Rubavu district in the Western Province are asking that the health center that was constructed for them begin to function as a regular one, because ever since it opened, it has either only received COVID-19 patients or served as a center to deal with the potential threat of an Ebola outbreak.
For the past 2 years, the health center had been serving as a COVID-19 treatment center, and before that it was on standby to receive Ebola patients as the virus ravaged the eastern DRC. And it was anticipated that it may make its way across the border, but that threat never materialized. Today the health center stands empty, and when we visited it, we found people using it to hold local elections for the private sector federation and the district.
We expected it to serve as a regular health center, then it became a COVID-19 treatment center. We are therefore waiting for the government to reopen it as a normal health center so that we can use it.
Those sort of services are no longer needed, and in any case, that is not the reason it was constructed in the first place. It was built to treat local residents for other regular illnesses.
We are asking that they open the local health center so that we do not have to travel long distances to access such services.
With the health center not operational, the local residents of Rugerero sector must go to the Nyundo health center when they get sick, more than 7 kilometers away in another sector.
I have a severe stomach ache, and getting a bus to get to this health center was extremely difficult for me. Having one in Rugerero would be much easier, not the way it is now, being so far away.
The idle Rugerero Health Center is properly equipped thanks to the work it had been doing since opening, and local leaders are urging people in the sector to be patient because it will soon be serving its proper function. We are consolidating resources and getting all the necessary equipment it needs so that in April it can begin operating normally. They should be patient for just a little longer because it will soon serve the purpose it was originally built for. We have already recruited the doctors that will work in it, so the local residents should be patient. Of all the 12 sectors of Rubavu district, only Rugerero did not have its own health center, which is why local residents were happy when it was completed back in 2018, but was unfortunately never used as they had hoped. They now have only a few more weeks until they get what they have been waiting for.
Thank you very much, Serge Node, for the report. And as we move ahead in regards to the Russia-Ukraine conflicts, the African Union has released a statement reporting ill treatment of Africans trying to leave Ukraine. On 28th February 2022 in Addis Ababa, the current chair of the African Union and the President of the Republic of Senegal, His Excellency Macky Sall, and the chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency Moussa Faki Mahamat, are following closely the development in Ukraine and are particularly disturbed by the reports that African citizens on the Ukrainian side of the border are being refused the right to cross the border safely. The two chairpersons recall that all the people have the right to cross international borders during a conflict, and as such should enjoy the same rights across to cross to safety from Ukraine as there are conflicts begin. Reports that Africans are singled out for unacceptable dismissal treatment would be shockingly racist and is a breach of international law. In this regard, the chairpersons urge all countries to respect international law and show the same empathy and support to all people fleeing war, notwithstanding their racial identity. The chairpersons commended the efforts by the African Union member state countries and the embassies in neighboring countries to receive the Orient African citizens and their families trying to cross the border from Ukraine to safety. And as we move ahead, economic analysts find that if the Russia-Ukraine conflict lasts for a longer period of time, it would have serious consequences on economies of many countries, including a rise in prices of goods and services, increase in transportation costs, and more. They say this as Russia is EU's fifth largest trade partner, representing 4.8% of EU's total trade in goods with the world in 2020. The European Union is Russia's biggest trade partner, accounting for 37.3% of the country's total trade in goods with the world in 2020. 36.5% of Russia's imports came from the European Union, and 37.9% of its exports went to the European Union as well. Russia is the origin of 26% of the EU's oil imports and 40% of EU's gas imports. Energy prices voluntarily directly affect the volume of bilateral trade. And total trade in goods between the EU and Russia in 2020 amounted for 174.3 billion euros. The EU's imports were worth 95.3 billion euros and were dominated by fuel and mining products, especially petroleum, which equalized 67.3 billion euros, representing 70.6% of Russia's trade with Africa. As of last year, 2021, Russia's imports to Africa were worth 14 billion US dollars a year, and imports of Africa products to Russia were worth 5 billion US dollars. The figures represent a doubling of Russian-Africa trade since 2015 and an average annual growth rate of 15%. And to understand more the issue this evening, we're joined by Strato Habyarimana. He's an economic analyst. Strato, good evening, and thank you for your time on Rwanda Television News.
Good evening.
All right. Of course, different sanctions have been taken against Russia, of course, by the European Union and the United States of America. But first of all, in your opinion, is this enough to make President Vladimir Putin reconsider his actions in Ukraine?
I don't think so, because when you look at the extent of the measures taken against Russia and the interest they have in this particular conflict, the interest outweighs actually the measures taken against them. So I don't think actually they will change any behavior from the Russian leaders who took the decision to invade Ukraine.
But looking at this conflict in a wider mirror, Strato, how do we say the conflict in Ukraine and Russia is going to affect the world economy at large? Will this have any impact? Because, you know, everyone is talking about this, the conflicts in Russia and Ukraine, you know, many sanctions, including freezing some of the funds that Russia had in international banks and, you know, other sanctions. taken against Russia, as it is a market and both a producer of different products to the world at large. So is this conflict going to have a tangible impact on the world economy?
It has already had an impact on the world economy. As we have realized, the prices on the financial markets have plummeted since the beginning of the week. And that really affected the economy in general because everyone will fear to invest and will tend to sell shares and other investments. Decision will be actually depending upon how the situation evolves, and people will tend to wait and see what will happen. And this will have actually an effect on inflation, for example. The prices might increase. For example, also, you see the economy was still trying to recover from the impact of COVID-19. So if the inflation was still not very well maintained, then definitely, control, then definitely this conflict will have an impact on the overall situation of the inflation, and it will tend to increase further. This will have an impact on all the economies around the world, particularly when you consider that one of the items which will be affected will be fuel and oil and gas, of course, as we mentioned. All those items enter into the normal consumption of all the household. And then, therefore, we expect that the inflation will be a very big problem, which will affect the economies around the world.
Stato, should we be concerned as Africans, and can we say this conflict is going to affect us Africans? Why should we be concerned about the Russia-Ukraine conflicts?
There are several reasons for us Africans to be concerned. One is if the conflict escalates, it will involve several countries, including European countries and other developed countries, which were contributing to the development of African countries through grants, subsidies, development aid. And if the priority for them will be to focus on the war, then definitely we will miss out on those opportunities to develop using external funds. That's one. And two, when I talk of inflation and the price increasing, it will happen everywhere, including in Africa. So if the prices increases, actually it affects the population in Africa, their capacity to buy, the purchasing power. And when it affects the purchasing power, it means actually it affects the well-being, which also is one of the objectives of people trying to develop themselves, to improve their well-beings. And if they cannot actually improve because of the inflation and the rising prices, then definitely that negatively affects everyone in Africa, including in Africa.
And you just mentioned about it. Should this be a task of different African governments to, can I say, to create solutions that might help Africa or to cope up with the effects that might come up with this conflict that is on the ground? Should this be a task for African governments to find a solution in advance?
I think the first task for the leaders in Africa would be to monitor what's happening. And if things escalate, take coordinated measures or initiatives to respond to any consequences that might trickle down to Africa. One is actually to monitor whether the prices increase, for example, look for alternative markets. And we don't buy a lot of goods and the services from Russia, but whatever we buy there from Russia and Ukraine, but for whatever we get from Russia and Ukraine, we should be starting looking for alternative markets, for example. And the second one is actually to make sure that the direct involvement is avoided at any cost, because direct involvement will also result in increasing costs. For example, if the governments need to contribute to this conflict, and definitely the expenses related to this contribution would be ill allocated, because actually there are better things you can do with money instead of involving in a conflict which doesn't affect us directly.
Oh, thank you very much, Stato Abiyanimana, for your time on Rwanda Television News tonight.
You're welcome.
And of course, as we move ahead to other matters, livestock farmers are urging the government to help them build large stockpiles of basic raw materials, including maize and soybeans, as their prices rise sharply and affect animal feed prices. This was revealed when the Director General of the Rwanda Agriculture and Animal Resources Development Board visited the owners of the fruit and vegetable processing industry. Sidi Patel has the details.
Mr. Janvier Kivuye, General Manager of Gorilla Feed, talks about how Gorilla Feed Factory is one of the largest animal feed processing plants in Rwanda, with a production capacity of 5 tons per hour, and about the prices of maize and soybeans that will eventually go up.
We have a good time with him. We have shared our current situation about raw material price, which is very high. So that is the only problem we have currently, but the problem starts since the COVID-19 started. So everything has become expensive because of this pandemic situation.
Afrasite Factory is the only factory that specializes in receiving products that containing aflatoxins, and their machines remove them, leaving the products safe for consumption.
So our technology can specifically help improve the quality of maize once it's left the field. So many times farmers have a hard time with post-harvest, and our machinery can help to clean their maize, dry their maize, and then also help remove aflatoxin once it's present in their maize stalks. So our machinery can help to sort the infected maize that has aflatoxin present.
The Director General of Rwanda Agriculture and Animal Resources Development Board, Dr. Patrick Karangwa, met and held discussions with industrialists, urging them to expand their operations and set up bigger storage facilities to be able to receive more produce from farmers. He also gave assurances that government is ready to support them in this regard.
Government is now going to establish an animal feeds reserve. You are used to this strategic grain reserve. You know that in the very recent, some farmers in the eastern province were so much affected by the drought, and you know that the government used the strategic grain reserve to support the farmers.
During wet seasons like the current one, farmers are being urged to properly store their harvest to avoid damage. Siddhi Patel, RTV News.
And on behalf of the entire news production team that made it happen, thank you very much for being with us. My name is Sam Kalisa, wishing you a safe evening and a fruitful week ahead. Goodbye.